Tonight, the growing state of emergency. Florida braces for impact from what could become a major hurricane.
We prepare for the worst, we hope for the best, but we are going to see significant impacts no matter what happens.
Israel and Hezbollah on the brink of an all-out war as the two trade fire.
Full-scale war is not in anyone's interest.
There were so many red flags.
And tonight's Eye on America, an in-depth look at the online scams from overseas that are costing Americans billions of dollars.
It must be heartbreaking for you to watch that.
Absolutely. It's shocking.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. Tonight, we're tracking Tropical Storm Helene as it churns and strengthens over the warm waters of the Caribbean. We're about 48 hours away from landfall, but the Gulf Coast of Florida is bracing for a direct hit, possibly as a major Category 3 hurricane, with winds well over 100 miles per hour and a possible 15-foot storm surge. That would be the strongest hurricane America has seen this year, which is why Florida's governor and President Biden have already declared a state of emergency, and mandatory evacuations are underway in several low-lying counties. And while Florida is expected to bear the brunt of the storm, the entire southeast of the U.S. could feel the impact. CBS's Lonnie Quinn is tracking Helene, and he's going to lead us off with the latest on where and when it's expected to hit. Good evening, Lonnie.
Good enough, Nora. You know, you're talking about the intensity of the storm, how strong it can get. We know there's nothing but warm water ahead of it, so that's going to feed the storm. But does it encounter land or does it not? What we're focusing on, the Yucatan Peninsula. If it sits over that area for any amount of time, it'll be weaker when it emerges and pushes towards Florida. Well, right now, it's right in between the tip of Cuba and the Yucatan, and guess what? The National Hurricane Center believes it may very well thread that needle and not spend any time over land, so it gets stronger and stronger. A Cat 1 by tomorrow, and that Cat 3 is a possibility Thursday as it makes landfall somewhere along the Big Bend. And if it sets up right off the Big Bend of Florida, the Big Bend is like, it's like a 90-degree angle. Nowhere for that water to go. All the while, it is just pushing and churning that water onshore. So if that's the forecast, you gotta bump up the storm surge numbers. You have no choice because there's nowhere for that water to escape to. Yesterday, we thought 5 to 8 feet north of Tampa. Now north of Tampa, it could be 8 to 15 feet for a part of our country that does not have much elevation to play with. That could be a real problem, Nora.
Important information, Lonnie Quinn. Thank you very much. The sheer power of Helene has some Floridians taking action now. CBS's Jason Allen is on Florida's Big Bend tonight.
All along Florida's west coast, people are fueling up.
I got about 3/4 of a tank right now, but we try to stay full. You never know.
And boarding up ahead of Helene. Here in the coastal town of East Point, business owners are taking no chances, shutting down days before the storm hits. Mandatory evacuation orders are already in effect for some people living in coastal or low-lying areas. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is urging residents to prepare now.
Right now, regardless of how it forms or the speed, right now you do have time. So take advantage of that time.
Inland in Tallahassee, city officials fear the storm could knock out power. When you see a storm track like this, though, how much does it concern you?
It's very concerning. I'm from Tallahassee. This is my hometown. We have never seen a storm of this magnitude that could possibly be a direct hit to Tallahassee.
With up to 15-foot storm surges predicted, residents are also concerned.
Are you nervous about the storm?
Yes, I am, because this is different. We don't know which way it's going to go and what's going to happen, but all I know, I had to trust and believe in God.
Simply moving back from the water's edge on a storm like this, it really doesn't help much because, as Lonnie was explaining a minute ago, it is so flat back in this direction. So here in coastal counties, they are not even opening shelters, in part because of safety and also to encourage people to move further inland and out of the direct path of the storm. Nora?
Jason Allen, thank you very much. Now to the rising fear of an all-out war on Israel's northern border. Israeli fighter jets pounded southern Lebanon today, targeting Hezbollah militants. Officials in Lebanon say hundreds of people, including dozens of children, have been killed in the past 2 days. Hospitals are overwhelmed and thousands are scrambling for safety. We've got two correspondents in the region. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb is going to lead us off tonight from Beirut. Good evening, Imtiaz.
Nora, good evening. Well, with Hezbollah and Israel on the brink of an all-out war, the fear now is it could drag Hezbollah's main backer, Iran, and Israel's closest ally, the United States, into a regional war that has the potential of being more devastating and far deadlier than what we've seen so far.
Beirut's southern suburbs targeted yet again in an Israeli airstrike. At least 6 were killed in the apparent assassination of another top Hezbollah commander. As tens of thousands of civilians flee Israel's devastating bombardment of southern Lebanon. Since Monday, at least 558 people, including 50 children, have been killed in the strikes, according to Lebanese health officials. This elderly man only barely surviving. Israel insists it's only targeting Hezbollah's military infrastructure, while Hezbollah says it won't stop firing rockets until the war on Gaza ends. But the Iran-backed group is outgunned and deeply compromised after Israeli intelligence infiltrated Hezbollah's communications devices, causing them to explode. And yet, the attacks on both sides of the border are only escalating.
I'm Chris Livesay in Kiryat Bialik, a town in northern Israel that's been hammered by the Iran-backed group.
Most of Hezbollah's rockets and drones have been intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defenses, but not all of them. This one landed right in the middle of this neighborhood, damaging 80 to 90 homes, we're told.
Bar Pellet is a local construction worker.
It's not 100%. You have missile here, missile there.
Israel says Hezbollah fired some 300 rockets today. This was one of them, narrowly missing families hiding in their shelters.
I hear children. I mean, people are still here.
Yes, of course. They're nowhere to go. This is our house. This is our home. Where we go?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the Lebanese people today that Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah was leading you to the brink of the abyss and warned that anyone hiding a rocket in his garage will not have a home. Nora?
Chris Livesay in Israel and MTS Tayeb in Lebanon. Thank you very much. President Biden delivered his final address to the UN General Assembly today, warning that the world is at an inflection point. CBS's Weijia Jiang joins us now from the UN headquarters in New York City. Good evening, Weijia.
Good evening, Nora. President Biden tried to strike an optimistic tone in a wide-ranging speech that warned against isolationism and urged countries to work together. He spoke about American leadership, calling for an end to the wars in Sudan, Ukraine, and the Middle East. The president said the time is now to finalize the ceasefire deal that the United Nations Security Council approved in June, which includes the immediate release of hostages. And he said that a full-scale war is in nobody's interest.
A diplomatic solution is still possible. In fact, it remains the only path to lasting security to allow the residents from both countries to return to their homes and the border safely.
President Biden also addressed climate change, artificial intelligence, and the need to continue supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. And on a personal note, the president told world leaders that some things are more important than staying in power. Nora?
Weijia Jiang at the UN, thank you. The man accused of targeting former President Donald Trump on his West Palm Beach golf course was indicted today on a new charge of attempted assassination. Ryan Ruth was already facing federal gun charges. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland today called the attempted assassination a heinous act. With 42 days until Election Day, both candidates are focusing on a top issue for many Americans, the U.S. economy. Vice President Kamala Harris will add details to her economic plans in Pittsburgh tomorrow. Former President Donald Trump presented his in Georgia today. And as CBS's Robert Costa reports, one of the cornerstone proposals is already drawing skepticism.
In battleground Georgia today, former President Donald Trump proposed tax breaks for companies that make products in the U.S.
Not only will we stop our businesses from leaving for foreign lands, but under my leadership, we're going to take other countries' jobs.
Trump also said he would impose a 100% tariff on cars coming from Mexico.
The only way they'll get rid of that tariff is if they want to build a plant right here in the United States with you people operating that plant.
But some economists and even members of his own party say tariffs could lead to higher inflation.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of tariffs. They raise the prices for American consumers.
It's Trump's first visit to Georgia since a conservative election board that he has praised approved a controversial rule requiring all precincts to hand count ballots, in addition to a traditional machine count. That prompted criticism from officials in both parties, including Georgia's Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
Do you worry the board's playing politics?
Some of their rules would actually delay the process. We don't think that's healthy for our republic at any time, but particularly now when we are so highly polarized.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris has returned to a cornerstone of her campaign, reproductive rights, calling for a change to Senate rules to reinstate protections under Roe v. Wade.
I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe. 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom.
Last night, Trump also addressed the issue of abortion and said he would protect women.
Women will be happy, healthy, confident, and free. You will no longer be thinking about abortion.
And tonight, CBS News has learned the specter of violence continues to hover over this campaign. Police now investigating apparent gunfire damage to a Democratic campaign office in Arizona, just days before the vice president visits the state. Nora.
That's disturbing. Robert Costa, thank you very much. CBS News will host the only vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz 1 week from tonight in New York. I will be moderating along with Margaret Brennan. You can catch our live coverage on CBS and then streaming on CBS News 24/7 and Paramount+. Eye on America is next, kicking off a series of reports on the growing wave of overseas scammers robbing Americans over the internet. Well, are banks doing enough to protect customers? This year, we've been examining the epidemic of crime, the surge of overseas scammers robbing Americans online. Well, tonight we kick off a week of new reporting with a focus on the money, the billions being lost, and this new challenge confronting American banks. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Jim Axelrod has the story of a 92-year-old woman in Los Angeles who lost her life savings despite her daughter pleading with her bank for help before it was too late.
I'll never forget, there was a message on my phone.
Hello, I'm calling with Charles Schwab with the Financial Crimes Investigations team.
This was 6 months ago. The message for Leslie came from Charles Schwab, where her mother had an investment account.
They just mentioned large transactions and wire transfers, and did I know what was taking place?
And you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Leslie, who asked we only use her first name, was discovering her mother was one of tens of thousands of Americans being scammed by criminals overseas this year. These scammers pretended to be IT experts from the government who told her mom her computer had been hacked and convinced her to take money out of her account to buy gold, which they said was a safer investment.
I didn't talk to my family about it.
Especially insidious, the scammers told Leslie's mom, Ruth, to keep all of this secret.
Well, I wanted to tell them, but I thought that the government would punish me, and I didn't want them to get into trouble, anybody that I told.
Leslie was a trusted contact on Schwab's paperwork, and the firm had her ask her mom about what was going on.
We said, where is the gold? Is it in your apartment? Is it in a safety deposit box? Where is the gold? And she wouldn't tell us.
This is surveillance video showing exactly what happened to the gold. Watch as Ruth walks it outside her retirement home and hands over her life savings to a stranger.
It must be heartbreaking for you to watch that.
Absolutely. Shocking.
One after another, the balances in her mother's accounts began to plummet.
How are you doing today? So I said, I'm going to film the entire interaction with you and the scammers on my phone.
Okay, let's start all over again, no worries.
Until Leslie convinced Ruth.
Okay.
The people on the other end of the line were not there to help.
Now, next, click on next.
And convinced her to fight back.
Every single day, they required her to sit next to her computer, take their calls, and log into whatever accounts they needed.
Leslie told us that she warned Schwab, thinking if they knew what was happening, they'd put an end to it.
I am begging you, lock my mother's account down, please.
But it was too late. Ruth's accounts had been drained. Schwab declined an interview but disputed Leslie's account, saying the company repeatedly communicated with Leslie and she did not express concerns after speaking with her mother.
There were so many red flags.
Attorney Anne-Marie Murphy filed the lawsuit on behalf of Ruth, alleging that Schwab's inaction amounted to aid and material contribution to the scammers, which Schwab says is untrue and unfair.
Everybody that has a credit card in this country is familiar with having transactions declined. And the reason that credit cards are so good at doing this is because they're on the hook for fraud. The same isn't true with banks.
With the responsibility comes the consequence if you fail at protecting your clients.
Correct.
Banks invest billions of dollars in trying to catch these guys, but we can't do it alone.
Paul Benda from the American Bankers Association says it's the government's job to help target the scammers, not just the financial industries.
Government has to play a key role in here. So when a bank calls up with a potential scam, we need them to engage quickly and help us make the right decision.
At 92, Ruth, who spent her professional life taking care of others as a nurse, has now lost her life savings.
This should not happen to any decent, law-abiding citizen who's spent their whole life working so that they can save a bit of money for their retirement. And something needs to be done about it.
Schwab wouldn't do an interview, but emphasized it is difficult for a bank to tell a client they can't do what they want to do with their own money. Now, some financial institutions have figured out a way to identify and intercede with potential scam victims. More on that, Nora, tomorrow on CBS Mornings.
So upsetting to see what happened, Jim Axelrod. Thank you for the investigation. A Hall of Fame quarterback reveals he's battling a serious brain disorder. That's coming up next. Former Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre dropped a bombshell today while testifying before Congress. The 54-year-old revealed he is battling Parkinson's disease. Here's CBS's Omar Villafranca.
I very much appreciate the opportunity to testify here today.
A stunning announcement today from Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre.
I've recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. This is also a cause dear to my heart.
Favre was testifying on Capitol Hill about a Mississippi welfare scandal where he is accused of improperly using his connections to secure millions of dollars for his alma mater and himself for speaking engagements he never performed. Favre has repaid more than $1 million to the state and has denied all wrongdoing.
Even though I knew and I know I had done nothing wrong, I returned the funds, no questions asked.
Favre's flashy style of play led to countless highlights and crushing hits. He has not been diagnosed with CTE, but it's not clear if Favre's Parkinson's diagnosis is directly related to his numerous concussions. Dr. Tor Steen, a neuropathologist at Boston University, says recent studies show there could be a connection.
A recent study that we published, we found that in former players with CTE, 25% of them had symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So it is unfortunately a fairly common symptoms that can occur.
A recent medical study showed that suffering just one concussion can increase the likelihood of being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease later in life by 57%. But doctors say early diagnosis can slow the disease. Nora?
Thank you, Omar. Heart of America is next. Finally, tonight's Heart of America takes us to the U.S. Capitol for a special tribute to country music icon Johnny Cash. Members of his family, including daughter Roseanne, helped unveil a statue of the Man in Black in Emancipation Hall. It's 8 feet tall with a guitar slung across his back and a Bible in his hand. Cash, who sold 90 million records worldwide, died in 2003 at the age of 71. The statue will represent Arkansas, where Cash grew up, and was created by sculptor Kevin Cressy of Little Rock. It is the second statue from the state to be placed in the Capitol. A statue of civil rights leader Daisy Bates was unveiled in May. Country legend Johnny Cash is tonight's Heart of America. Love that song, Ring of Fire. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.